Hey everybody, I'm Todd Anderson.
And I'm Ross Merriam.
And you're watching Versus Live by StarCityGames.com. We got Nick Miller over in the booth. Say hey, Nick.
What's going on, everybody?
Can we call it the sideboard now because Nick Miller's there?
Absolutely. We should have been calling it sideboard all along. What's wrong with me?
Well, we can't.
I'm such an idiot.
We can't call it the sideboard if Nick Miller's not there. The sideboard is by definition the place where Nick Miller is.
Pretty much.
That's what I call Nick Miller's apartment. His
It's wherever I am.
Yes,
Whenever
his
he's at
desk.
Panera Bread,
Yeah.
that is the side bread.
Yes.
Some good bread, too.
So we have a lot on the docket this week. We got two major events coming up this weekend. We have StarCityGames.com regionals. And if you would like to figure out where you can find your local regionals, make sure to head over to StarCityGames.com. On the right-hand side of the screen, there should be a quick link. It'll show you where all of them are at. The one you can find the one closest to you by either putting in your address or just looking at a map. You know, either way, it's up to you. But what else do we have going on this weekend, Ross?
I
I
think they're.
Yeah, I think that's it, actually. No, it's
Yeah.
just Star City Games. No, this weekend we have Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica straight out of Hotlanta. Brad Nelson's going to be there. I'm not going to be there.
I'm not gonna be there.
I haven't been to Pro Tour in years. I don't even know why they pay me to be here anymore.
I'll be at one in a few months. I confused myself. I thought I was skewed for this one. I actually want a PTQ for Cleveland. Didn't realize it until I went to go book my travel a month and a half ago. And I actually read the sheet they gave me for the very first time.
The old school blue envelope. Did you get a blue envelope?
No, I got a piece of paper printed right in front of me.
That's tilt.
That was at Richmond with humans, right?
Yeah, it was the end of August. So
Classic 8-0 Marion or 701 Marion.
No, it was 8-0.
I
so.
thought you didn't have to.
Oh yeah, we did. We had to draw that. Whatever.
Yeah.
Regardless, we got a Pro Tour this weekend. We also have the Player of the Year playoff between Javier Dominguez and Seth Manfield.
That's not
Luis Salvato.
Luis Salvato. Yeah, I was like, it's one of them, and I guessed. I should have known not to guess between 50-50.
You can't just be pulling Brad Nelson's up in here. Just call him things the wrong name. You know.
Well, I'm keeping him here in spirit.
Tom Ross this weekend at the Pro Tour?
What? Tom Ross is going to be at the Pro Tour.
He did tweet a photo story in 3 parts, which was like his dinner with like the WotC people, a signed playmat, and then an email from his email box saying you're invited to Pro Tour Guilds of Ravnica. So
that's
theoretically we could see the boss.
I wonder what the boss will be playing this week. I'm going to guess it's one of the 6 decks we're playing today on Versus Live.
Exactly one of them. It would be my guess.
Yes. So normally Tom Ross is famous for playing low to the ground, hyper aggressive strategies, and there was a little tournament this past weekend called the Magic Online Championship Series monthly
qualifier event.
Look, it's the longest
.com,
name.
.net,
yeah,
.org.
Fishnet. And it's a fairly like good tournament as far as like the quality of player involved, because in order to qualify for this tournament you have to have 35 imaginary points that you get somehow by going some record and some events on Magic Online, but not all of them, but some of them, and others you get a different kind of point.
Requires consistent performance over the course of a long period of time on Magic Online. So quality of players high. Yeah. And
Todd,
last weekend's mocks.
Weren't you going to play?
Oh yeah,
in the
I
mocks?
actually stayed home this weekend to play this tournament because A, I didn't really want to travel to Atlanta. B, I wanted to play Standard over Modern, and C, I thought I had 35 qualifier points, and I had in fact 34.
Womp.
One of those is less than the other.
Well, that is true. So I was so upset by this fact, I sold my entire Magic Online collection. Not even joking. Just not joking.
Wow,
I just did that.
See, you watching at home might be surprised by this fact and be like, only a person who has lost their mind would ever do this.
What are you talking about?
Having lived in Roanoke for almost 3 years now in close proximity to Todd Anderson, I'm not surprised at all.
How many times have I done this since you've lived in Roanoke in the last 3 years?
At least 2 other times.
At least one other time. Because I only remember one other time for sure. And that was when they announced Magic Arena. I was like, well, Magic Online's dead. Time to dump it. But luckily, Magic Online's still going strong. People really like Modern. Weird, right?
Yeah.
But
they also really like Standard.
So I am making the deep jump into Magic Arena. So you can check out my stream, twitch.tv/strong_sad. I'm going to be streaming later tonight.
Roll Tide.
Magic Arena. Roll Tide. But that's not what we're doing today. Today we are playing standard. We are playing 6 decks from the Magic Online Championship Series that went 6-2 or better.
Not all of them are from
5 of them are.
This one's from the Grand Prix. I think one other might be from the recent Grand Prix.
I told you to just get the ones from the box. You're making this hard on me.
Yeah, I wanted some variety. What? Sue me.
Okay, I will.
Okay.
We're taking you to court.
I'll look forward to the summons.
I got a lot of lawyer friends. I don't know. So what deck are you playing today? And I would like to go over it a lot, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
So I am playing Mono Blue Tempo. This is Gabriel Nassis' list. He was the runner-up at Grand Prix Lille. That was 3 weeks ago. Sort of a deck that has been around for a little while. It's underpowered because it's very low to the ground, super low curve, but it is very effective when it gets going. It definitely plays the tempo game really well. Yep. Curious Obsession is the card that really makes the deck tick. We've got a lot of cheap creatures, a lot of evasive creatures, and a lot of ways to interact with removal to protect them. So you land a Curious Obsession on a creature, you dive down the removal spell or counter it, and you start getting in and drawing 2 cards a turn, and things pretty quickly spiral out of control. And then you've got Tempest Djinn for your sort of heavy hitter if they deal with your early threats. Importantly, Tempest Djinn survives Deafening Clarion, which your other creatures do not.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the biggest draw for me right now in playing Tempest Djinn is that Deafening Clarion is the go-to sweeper for a lot of these mid-range and control decks. If they're not playing white and they're still playing red, some of them may lean towards something like Fiery Cannonade. If they're leaning on black, they may lean towards like Golden Demise. The only one of these like cheap sweepers that really hits Tempest Djinn is like Ritual of Soot, which is kind of just falling off the map.
Yeah, so that's really the only one, and that's also the one that's most vulnerable to counter spells. So you can hit it with Spell Pierce a lot more easily. You've got Negate and Disdainful Stroke in your sideboard, right. and Disdainful Stroke hits that one and not the others. So Tempest Djinn is a really powerful card. It's a card that I like, although the reason that I'm excited to be playing it is that I have a lot of good memories of putting 20 islands in my deck.
Nice.
So,
fair.
And a bunch of 1-mana blue creatures.
Wait, you only played 20 islands? Oh, yeah, I guess you played 4 Mutavault and 1 Nykthos.
Okay, that 20 islands, baby.
Just itching to play those Frostborn weirds again.
Frostborn Weird, Judge's Familiar, Cloudfin Raptor. I love it.
Yeah. Judge's Familiar, multi-PT champion.
Yes. Yeah, we put some respect on that name. 2-time Pro Tour champion, Judge's Familiar.
Yeah. I am going to be playing a Jeskai control list from the Magic Online Championship. I believe this version went 7-1. I believe there was only 1 or 2 decks that went 8-0.
Exactly, one deck that went 8-0. That'll be in match 2.
Yeah, and that's the deck we think that Mr. Tom the Boss Ross is going to be playing because it is right up his alley on a number of reasons. But this Jeskai control list is interesting for a number of reasons. Over the last few weeks, myself included, a lot of these control players have been moving towards some sort of engine-based card that costs 2 mana, whether that's Search for Scanta or whether that's Azor's Gateway, which has been the big breakout card for control over the last month or so. They leaned heavily on this card to early in the game to really fix their draw as well as give them some sort of burst of either mana or card advantage later in the game. Azor's Gateway, very strong alongside Expansion Explosion, just being able to one-shot your opponent a lot of times, or just give you enough mana to win a counter war very easily in a control mirror.
Yeah, you tap your 1 land, cast your Teferi, and have so much mana untapped, and then you start untapping it with Teferi, and you just generate such a huge mana advantage. So it's this card that can really go over the top when you're preparing for very long, drawn-out games.
Yeah. And notably in the Magic Online Championship qualifier, if you take a look at all the decks that went 6-2 or better, there's not a lot of slow decks. It is aggressive. And one of the reasons why I was not very high on Azor's Gateway for a long time in Jeskai control was because it just wasn't very good against mono red. The Golgari decks where you think it would be pretty good, we're all playing a bunch of things like the Vraska Golgari Queen, and they would be able to have this 4-mana thing that can minus on it. At the time, a lot of people were playing Thrashing Bronodon.
Another card I think is well positioned right now.
Yeah, and sideboarding Reclamation Sage. And so, the first league that I played with Azor's Gateway in my Jeskai control deck, I didn't even come close to flipping it. But then,
even close.
No, I think the closest I ever got was 3 different casting costs on the card. And then at testing for Grand Prix New Jersey, things started to slow down. More control decks, more Golgari, more mid-range in general.
The Golgari deck started to get bigger and bigger to fight the mirror matches and fight Jeskai. So that the format was slow around that time.
Yep. And then Azor's Gateway started flipping every game when I played it, and that really kind of changed gears. This past weekend, though, things took a huge turn, and I don't think that you have time for that anymore. We saw a resurgence of Mono Red after the GP Lille winner, which defeated Gabriel Nassif. We saw a huge turnout for white-based aggressive decks. Just the Dauntless Bodyguard, Savannah Alliance type beatdown decks that top it off with one of 2 cards, either Pride of the Conquerors or Splashing Red for Heroic Reinforcements, which... To me, I've known about this card for a while. You knew about it like a month and a half ago, just like
I tried
splashing it in your tokens decks, right? But these decks aren't really token based. They play History Benalia, they play Heroic Reinforcements, and then the rest of their deck is just these like really cheap creatures that are sometimes hard to kill or sometimes evasive. It's basically pick and choose your own 1-drops. Some people play Hunted Witness and Snubhorn Sentry alongside like Venerated Luxon to give them some kick. Or others just play all low to the ground, hard-hitting 2-power creatures, and then just try to go for the throat as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
I believe the winning list even had Healer's Hawk in it as the 1-drop.
That one.
Yeah.
This is sort of the natural progression of things, right? We had a format that very early on, the red decks did really well. The aggressive decks did well in week 1. And then the format starts slowing down as people combat these aggressive decks. And then you get all these mid-range decks playing against each other. And the way you win those mid-range mirrors is by going bigger and bigger. And so the format slows down over time until you get to the point where the aggressive decks can come back in and punish these people for having things like Azor's Gateway or a bunch of Carnage Tyrants in their deck. Yep. These really high curves. And now we're at a point where the metagame looks very aggressive. And I don't know if exactly the Pro Tour is going to... We don't know if the Pro Tour is going to follow the same script that the format has been flowing in, or if all the best players in the world who have been preparing for this tournament for weeks now have some tech that they figured out that hasn't been unleashed yet, and we might see the metagame shift in very interesting ways because of that. So we've got an exciting week coming up in the Pro Tour to see whether or not the pros have anything new, or if it's going to be more about tuning your deck for this moment in time, because we've had a very dynamic standard format up until this point where it keeps changing, and because you're never going to get to a point where the top decks are so good that they can't be beaten. You can always adapt to them, and that's the sign of a healthy format. And so then it just becomes about reading the room for that weekend and knowing how people are going to react to the previous week.
Yeah, I mean, for example, this coming weekend, if the Pro Tour reads the same way as the Magic Online Championship Series, I think that a card like Wild Growth Walker could come back in a huge way.
Yeah.
In the first week of Guilds of Ravnica Standard, I knew Mono Red with Experimental Frenzy and a lot of these Chain Whirlers and such would be a very good deck. And one of the first decks I built was a Wild Growth Walker Gruesome Menagerie deck. And, I just continue to hammer home like these huge bursts of life, as well as just inherent card advantage. And that deck started to fall off once the Golgari decks all started getting bigger in order to beat the other Golgari decks. But if everything's low to the ground, I think Wild Growth Walker could have a huge impact. Anyway, we've been talking for too long. Just way too long. We're going to get to a match in a second. But first, Nick Miller, do you got any questions for us from Twitch chat?
We do have questions. We also have 2 subs coming in hot.
Woo!
We got Hail Me 786 and Samsonator coming in with the subs here. Samsonator, 2 months in a row. Appreciate that.
Nice.
So first question here from Histeus is, what is the right mix of creatures in the Is It Phoenix deck? And this is something that
I'm gonna let Todd handle
there's
this
a
one.
lot of openings, because some people are doing Electromancer, some people are doing 8 Drakes.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Hey, Histeus. No one knows. I don't know if there's an actual right answer.
4 Crackling Drake. Pretty sure that was
I don't
right.
even know if that's right. Okay, so I've actually seen like Liz Do Well that played 4 Electromancer, 3 Veach Drake, and 4 Phoenix. I think 4 Phoenix is the only Sacred Cow, right? Is that am I using that right?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
The Phoenix is 4 of.
The Phoenix is the only one that you can't change, and I think that's for obvious reasons, because your deck's kind of built around that specific card. As far as Electromancer versus Enigma Drake is concerned, I've seen lists play 3 Enigma Drake, 2 Electromancer. I've seen versions play 4 Electromancer, 3 Enigma, 3 Crackling. And like, I don't know which one's right. How am I supposed to possibly know that? I've played with both probably 40 matches or whatever, or 20 each or whatever. And I don't know. If I don't know now, I don't know if anyone's going to know ever.
Yeah, I've seen a bunch of lists that are like as greedy as just like Phoenix, 4 Electromancer, and like some like 2 or 3 Drakes. Wow. And I'm just like, how do you only play that many creatures? Because like I play the deck on Arena a lot, and it's like if your Phoenix is in the bottom half of your deck, you really lean heavily on those Drakes.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any Drakes, I don't know how you're winning the game.
I will say that Goblin Electromancer seems like its stock rises and falls with how fast the metagame gets. Because in a fast metagame, people are going to have a lot of cheap removal, and that's bad for Electromancer. And if people don't have that cheap removal, and instead there's a lot more Assassin's Trophies around, Electromancer gets a lot better. That's the one thing that I think I can confidently say.
Sure. No, I actually like that assessment. All right, next question.
Desolation Dragon 00 with the sub, and then
Nice.
Guamzi says, what are your thoughts on the green-white Angels deck popping up versus the Boros Angels deck? And I believe Kellen Pastor played a deck like this to a top 8 at
Yeah,
the Grand
he
Prix.
was top 8 in New Jersey.
Yeah, and I think that both decks are very metagame dependent, if that makes sense. Like they kind of fill this mid-range role of having a lot of the right threats. And depending on how you build your deck, like sometimes you have the right answers. Like the Lava Coils X4 out of the Boros Angels X from Brad was a complete metagame call in order to help fight off opposing Enigma Drakes, Crackling Drakes, as well as just
Rekindling
being
Phoenix.
An exile effect for Rekindling Phoenix and Arclight Phoenix. And but outside of those Lava Coils and the way he built like his creature suite with the 4 Tocatli Honor Guards main deck, like his deck could be unplayable by like as early as like right now. And that to me that's kind of awesome, right? But I actually, it's all contextual. The fact that it's moving so fast and changing so fast just means that all these questions you're asking, I could have figured this out a week ago and it's already different,
I think the Angel decks are ones that, when I looked at them at the time, they seemed like heavily built to be up on a Golgari-filled metagame with these main deck Tocatli Honor Guards. But if you look at them in a more aggressive metagame, Tocatli Honor Guard is 2-mana 1/3. It blocks Dauntless Bodyguard pretty well,
Yeah.
and all their other 1-drops. It can block down some Night tokens if it needs to. And one of the best cards against aggressive decks, Lyra Dawnbringer, real good with Aurelia. So
That's true.
they might be well poised to defeat an aggressive metagame, one that really dumps on the control decks, because the aggressive decks are usually pretty good against the control decks. They're really relying on Deafening Clarion to beat those low to the ground aggressive decks. And if they don't have it, I don't think they really have a shot. So if those suppress the numbers of control decks, which is where I think the Angel decks suffer, because your threats are vulnerable to cheap removal and counter spells, then I think they could be in a good spot. If we see a metagame defined by aggressive decks in Golgari midrange, then Honor Guard Angel decks seem great.
Last question before we get to some games. Maximilian III says, uncertain if this has been discussed, but are the white-based aggro decks the best decks considering last week's results?
I mean, I think that the results really speak for themselves. I think that the white-based aggressive decks clearly have a spark that some of the other ones don't. I think one of the biggest draws of playing something like the mono red aggressive deck is that the power of the card Goblin Chainwhirler really depends on whether or not your deck is playable. If Chainwhirler is really good, your deck's probably great. But at the same time, if your opponent is building their deck in such a way where it completely invalidates Chainwhirler and it can hit you harder and go under you, like if you can get under the mono red deck, that is bonkers to me. But they just consistently do it by just having more 1-drops, more cheap things, and a more explosive turn 4 with just heroic reinforcement sometimes to steal games out of nowhere.
Yeah, that is a good point. I think last week they caught the metagame napping where they just weren't prepared for aggressive decks. I don't expect that to happen at the Pro Tour now that they have seen the results of the mocks. How hard the backlash is against aggressive strategies, remains to be seen. But all these questions are centered around, what do you think is the best thing to do here? What do you think is this the best deck? the reality is that we don't have a standard format like we've had for the last 2 years, where a best deck was found and isolated, and it was mainly about tuning that deck over the course of for the based on how people were trying to combat it mostly in vain. But now we have a format where like the best deck changes every week. So the question isn't what is the best deck, is this the best deck for this weekend? And I have a hard time thinking aggressive decks are going to be, given that they just did well. And I think they are combatable. We might see more March of the Multitudes decks because they're pretty good against aggressive decks. We might see more Chain Whirlers to combat them, or the control decks cut back way down on Azor's Gateway and have more cheap removal. Like that, there are ways you can combat them, and it's just a question of where everyone is going to think the metagame is going to be at the Pro Tour. Yeah. And I'm sure the people who are preparing for it know a little bit more than we do.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, let's get down to brass tacks. Jeskai Control versus Mono Blue Tempo. Let's take a die roll. See who goes first, huh?
Sure.
All right.
I'll take odds.
Yeah, sure. Ah, crap. All right.
And it's even.
I will be on the play.
That's important.
As you guys draw opening hands, I'm just going to say the Boros tokens decks, my favorite draws from those decks where you just go like 4 reinforcements, 5 reinforcements, and you just like a billion damage out of nowhere. They can't really interact with it, and it's just, that's why I like to play that deck. But I have a feeling the Pro Tour, these players don't like losing to aggro, so yeah, I think they'll be ready for those types of decks.
My side, we're taking a look at an opener that has a 1 piece of interaction and a couple of dig spells, so we're going to keep and hope that we find some removal considering the matchup.
Yeah, I have a pretty powerful hand here, and hopefully we find some more cheap interaction.
All right,
so
so get a Foundry tapped. Your turn.
Okay, I have a Siren Storm Tamer.
Card is notoriously disgusting against exactly Settle the Wreckage. But just a pretty good creature in general. It serves the dual role of being an evasive body for something like Obsession. But if you already have an Obsession and you play that afterwards, it does a great job playing defense as well.
It is also the most expensive card in the deck. Really? These are $4 or $5 piece.
It's an uncommon.
Yes.
But Tempest Gens are rare.
Yeah.
How is it more expensive than Tempest Gen? That's some bullcrap.
Most expensive card in the deck. Yes. I am done after this.
All right, we're going to be mana efficient and play this Revitalize. I'm going to go to 22 unless you want to counter it with a Spell Pierce or something.
Nope. We don't have to be super worried about hammering Todd's life total really early. Like what the tempo decks do is get ahead on board and get ahead on cards with Curious Possession. So we need to be more worried about those sorts of things. And like once that happens and we get ahead, the snowball will deal Todd enough damage. I'm going to opt on the end step. And I think we're good on lands. So let's bottom that one.
All right. And just for you at home looking at this specific board state, I want to call something out here.
Yeah.
So Ross had the option to play Opt as a main phase effect to either dig for another creature or dig for like Curious Obsession while I have 2 mana up there. Like he's not going to run into CLOA or whatever. But if he has another 1-drop creature, he might just want to cast it to put more pressure on me. So him not playing the Opt main phase leads me to believe he has Wizard's Retort in hand like 100%. Or some 2 mana counterspell that counters most things.
I will attack you for 1 again.
Yeah, 21.
Then I will.
What you got?
I've drawn an awkward hand.
Nice. For me.
Wait, hold on. This is not what I meant to do.
Okay.
You're at 22 still.
I'm at 22. Here comes a Curious Obsession.
Yes. Let's Obsession this thing.
All right. I'm going to try to counter that, I think.
I will Wizard's Retort as you knew I had. That was the plan the entire time. Todd's rant distracted me.
I'm sorry.
No worries. You're at
I'm at 20. Yep, you draw a card.
I draw a card.
And now I have 1 turn to find a removal spell, or else I am probably going to lose to exactly this stupid thing. So I will just play an Opt to give me the highest percentage chance to find a thing. Bottom Revitalize. And we missed.
See, and now the snowball is rolling down the hill.
23, draw a card. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna play this. As the control player, not having the removal spell on the spot means that I gave Ross the window he needed to turn the corner, and I am basically dead now.
So we definitely want to obsession the first time, and yeah, attack for 3 brings
20.
you to 20, and I draw 2.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think I take the time while Tadas. I could lose to Cleansing Nova, but with the way my hand is set up, I don't really have a way to protect from just spot removal. Though Todd has already demonstrated that he didn't have it. He's revitalized since then, and he has one other draw. He could also Teferi next turn and deal with the Storm Tamer that way. And he's at this point, even though if I left mana up, Todd is so far behind, and this threat is so threatening that he's going to have to play into any counterspells I have. So the fact that I don't really have one,
it's just a bad bluff.
it's just a bad bluff.
No, I completely agree, and I think that's something people do too much. Like, especially now that Shocklands are in the format, if you have the ability to like bluff on 2 or whatever with a Syncopate, your opponent's just never going to play around Syncopate for X equals 1. They're just going to cast their thing, because they have nothing else to do. You know, they might change which one they play, but usually they're roughly the same card or similar enough.
Yeah, when you're bluffing, you have to bluff in spots where it makes sense for your opponent to play around it.
Yeah,
and this is not a spot where it makes sense for Todd to play around things.
Oh, Clarion.
Yeah.
Your turn. Did you have a way to protect from Clarion?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I had another Curious Obsession.
Oh, nice. That's a lot of damage coming in though. Attack for 6.
Yeah, let's attack for 6 and draw a card.
Should be at 14. I've gained a lot of life off these Revitalize.
And I will play a Warkite Marauder.
Sure.
And pass the turn.
All right. Try Teferi. We had to do it this way because Teferi can check Jen, but Clarion can't.
Yeah, that resolves.
All right. Minus on this.
Not found. 3 from top. There we go. Not found any protection spells, which is awkward.
No, but you seem fairly threat dense, which I think is important for beating spot removal specifically.
So we'll play Trickster on end step, and now we can set up with our 4th Curious Obsession.
Yikes.
Yeah, I drew all the Curious Obsessions. I'm not sure which one
flying
should
doesn't
go
matter,
on.
so I think this is a better card in general.
Yeah.
All my threats fly, and I think this is just a better card.
So let's put it on the Trickster. So we'll send this at Teferi and the Trickster at Todd. Brings Todd to 11, and I draw another card. And now I have 5 damage on board, so I'll pass the turn.
All right. Well, he hadn't had it yet, and we just drew it, so we might as well.
Oh, that was the one I couldn't beat.
Nice dive down, bro. But you're gonna beat me now with this Tempest Gin, because I'm gonna play this Teferi and minus.
Tempest Gin, Mist Cloaked Herald. Pass the turn.
Yeah, because now I have to do this and minus on the Gin, and I lose
have
the
dive down.
Your turn.
Now I have the Herald to attack the Teferi, so the Jin can attack Todd.
I just want to point out, this game has gone surprisingly well for me as far as my things resolving, and I'm just getting destroyed.
And you take 7, go to 4.
Yeah.
And pass the turn. I did draw all 4 Curious Obsessions.
That's true. All right, I'm going to main phase Chemisters.
That's fine.
Look for a seal away. Well, okay, I'm done. Nice.
I also had a good draw step.
Nice.
The old cancel.
Whew. It shows you how strong the mono blue deck is against control in general, I think.
I mean, I just drew like 4 extra cards, which was...
Well, the first obsession drew you 2 cards, I think. The second obsession drew you 1. The third one drew 1, and the fourth one drew 1.
Okay.
So they all cycled except for 1.
Yeah.
But they put pressure on me that I had to. Like, I can't just sit back and not just cast my stuff into your spell every single turn. And if you ever find it, which you did with the dive down, I just die on the spot the next turn. So
yeah.
But all right, let's take 2 questions, and then we're going to take a brief 3-minute break while we do sideboarding.
Miss Straws asks, how big of a role does Revitalize play in hyper-aggressive metagame? Does it actually stem the bleeding, or do you just need more cheap interaction?
I would not call it cheap interaction. I call it, like, So the 3 life is not something that is normally ideal for a control deck as far as combating your opponent's early aggression, right? Like you're not really using Revitalize in a way where you actually stop the damage that your opponent is dealing you. What Revitalize does, it acts kind of like a buffer against Banefire. And Banefire has been seeing a pretty big uptick in sideboard play. While Brad Nelson noticeably played 0 in his sideboard at Grand Prix New Jersey, he made a conscious decision to not have any sideboard cards against Control. But because the matchup is so bad, and because I think Control winning the Grand Prix means there's going to be an uptick in it, I think more people are going to be citing things like Banefire for the Control matchup specifically. And Revitalize just gives you that buffer while just cycling. It's not great, but it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, it's just one of those marginal effects that does a little bit early on. It's like kind of like Opt. You just cycle through your deck. Sometimes you have Crackling Drakes in your deck, so you just want spells in your graveyard. Most of the time, the aggressive decks are attacking for about that amount of damage on that turn. So you just give yourself, if you take the heat off for just one extra turn, then give yourself the ability to maybe cast Chemist's Insight on turn 4 instead of having to interact with their board to protect your life total. And then you get to set up a Cleansing Nova or a Sweeper on turn 5 through a Spell Pierce, something like that, or Sweeper plus Counterspell, something to that effect. Then it just frees you up tactically in those from turns 3 through 5 so that you can get the most value out of your cards and have to worry less about your life total. Because one of the things that aggressive decks do and why they're successful is they force the opponent to make certain plays or they're going to lose the game. And it's plays that they wouldn't otherwise want to make because it's getting less value out of their cards than is possible. And a card like Revitalize is one that keeps that pressure off of you and unlocks that flexibility in how you're able to sequence so that you can really bury them in card advantage and then set up your Teferi and start burying them that way. And that's really what it does.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. One of the key things to note too is that in this standard format and previous standard formats even, decks are pretty polarizing in what spells you need to really interact with them. Like control decks, notoriously 0 creatures or 1 chromium, aggro decks like 20 creatures and some burn spells, or 32 creatures and like 4 cards you can't interact with, and then for some random spell. So the spells in your deck as a control player that you need to be able to actually effectively interact with your opponent varies wildly from opponent to opponent. And any card in your deck that effectively says this looks for something specific is going to be better than being something specific, because it just gives you a little more versatility. Like you can play in the Revitalize spot, you can just play spot removal, but then if you come up against a control opponent, that's a dead card, whereas Revitalize can translate into more lands or find you a Teferi or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same reason why I like Radical Idea a lot, just even outside of Arclight Phoenix decks, just as a way to churn through your deck, lets you turn dead cards into potential land drops, and Jumpstart in general I think is just a great mechanic because it allows you to translate dead cards into functionally powerful spells.
Yeah, which then lets you play more narrow cards in your deck that you otherwise wouldn't, because you can pitch them when you don't need them, and then those powerful effects come up more often.
Yeah.
So.
All right, one more.
People wanting to know, is it Director Dan or Director Robert today? Fill us in.
Yeah, you got Robert over here.
There we go. Say hello to Robert. And then people are wanting to know, if you had to pick a deck for the PT right now, what would it be? I'm sure we'll be asked that a lot today. If you want to iron that out now, you can. And then Iron of the Forge also wants to know if you have any hot takes on the MOX results.
All right. First off, if no one had any more time to test and the tournament started exactly today, I would play a Heroic Reinforcements deck that played Snubborn Sentry, Hunted Witness, and Venerated Luxodon. I think that 3 creature package is going to be a little bit better against people trying to attack you with things like Deafening Clarion and things like that. Specifically because Snubhorn can get, having 3 toughness to start, getting pumped by the Venerated Luxodon is pretty sweet. Obviously, a lot of your deck just kind of runs into the sweeper effects, but you want to try to mitigate that as much as possible with things like Bodyguard, Hunted Witness, and I'm not a huge fan of things like Healer's Hawk, But yeah, if it started exactly today and people didn't have time to test to try to beat this matchup specifically, I would play that deck.
I would play Selesnya Tokens deck, and not just because I've hyped up Selesnya for the last 2 months. I think we've gotten to a point in the metagame where Selesnya is good. It's a good anti-aggro deck that's still powerful enough and proactive to beat unknown decks.
Look, I'm a big enough man to admit when Jeskai control might not be very good. I feel like you could just say, maybe Celestia is not good.
I think
Just say it.
I think
Just
over
say
a
it.
long period
Say
of
it.
time, Selesnya is
Say
not
it.
that good. But we are at a time where Selesnya is quite good. Not that good. Not as good as I thought it would be.
All right.
But we are at a time.
Here's my hot take for the Pro Tour. This was the other
Prepare
question.
the hot take, Cam.
All right. There will be at least one deck in the top 8 that uses some weird engine card that we have not seen a lot of in Standard lately, just because I think that there's going to be someone who figures it out. I think
Provide an example, please.
Ollie Antrazi uses Lich's Mastery. I don't think that one specifically is going to do it. The first league I played with it, I went 5-0. The deck felt really powerful. When you get Lich's Mastery on the battlefield, having Revitalize just be a 2-mana draw 4 is kind of bonkers.
That's a powerful effect.
Yeah, but the more aggressive the format is, the worse a card like Lich's Mastery is going to be, which is why I don't think it'll be any good. The card that I really want to see play, and this is something that I know that everyone's like, oh, it's classic Todd Anderson or whatever. I think that Primal Amulet and the flipping into Primal Wellspring, honestly, the few times, like I
Giving
can't
me guff about talking about Celestia.
Yeah, this is where
brings
Ross-
up Primal
listen,
Amulet.
This is where Ross
Listen.
comes in and says, Todd, say it.
Scooter called that out in chat. People
Listen.
said that, by the way.
listen. Primal Amulet, the card, is so much easier to flip than I ever realized, just because of the card Radical Idea. And the back half of it is just bonkers. Like being able to copy Chemist's Insight to draw 4. I use it alongside Teferi to like triple expansion or double expansion explosion people. Like it, I haven't found the right spells to go around it, but someone could.
Yeah.
And I think that, and the fact that I think this card is so powerful has my best result with it's a 3/2, but the card feels so inherently powerful that I think that someone could do better than me with it. And that's why I think I don't think it will be Primal Amulet necessarily, but some engine card like that, like a Lich's Mastery, like a Primal Amulet, there's going to be one of those decks in the top 8 that someone just figures out and just beats everybody with.
Okay, that's a good hot take.
What's your hot take?
I don't really have one.
Oh, cold take, Mary.
I don't
Give me
think
a
you
cold
underst-
take.
I don't think you
Just say
understand how
Golgar's
hot
bad or
takes
something,
work.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really have a propensity for hyperbole, Todd.
All right. Well, we're going to take a 3-minute break to figure out sideboarding for Game 2 of Mono Blue Tempo versus Jeskai Control. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right. We're back for sideboarding. On my side of things, we're going to be cutting some of our cards that are a little weak in the matchup. Revitalize cycling to gain through life is not really what this matchup is about. Ross doesn't have any true reach as far as like dealing direct damage to the dome. So we don't really have to protect our life tools so much as long as we can win the battle early over
Imagine
Curious
this deck
Obsession.
at Psionic Blast.
I mean, it would be very good probably because it could also just kill a lot of the large creatures that like block your flyers.
Can we get a Psionic Blast reprint, please?
Okay.
Who cares that it doesn't do anything with the color pie? Robert, did you pull that one up yet?
Time Spiral, Time Shift have brought it back for a while.
Were you prepared for that one?
I was not.
Didn't think Psionic Blast was going to come up?
Yeah, I don't think. Well, I mean, no. Now I'm off track.
Blue Delver. And modern.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so what else we got? Disdainful Stroke, obviously bad, has very few, if zero targets.
We got one now. I guess we had one before too, but
yeah. As the games progress into the late game, cards like Syncopate are effectively dead because all of Ross's cards cost 1, 2, max 3 mana. And a lot of times, if we're gonna get into a counter war on like turn 4, 5, or 6, and Syncopate is mostly useless. Essence Scatter is a card that I think I might want to keep in. I might want to bring the second one in. I haven't quite figured it out yet with this particular sideboard. When in all of the Jeskai decks that I've played over the last few weeks, I like all my negates and essence scatters in the matchup just as a way to force through the removal spells, but I don't really know what else to cut. Like I can cut all the Sinister Sabotages, I guess, because they cost 3, but a lot of times you just need that hard counter to really lock the game up.
in general, I think in a matchup like this, you want to be less focused on counter spells and more focused on things that impact the battlefield.
Right.
And you just want to overload on things that impact the battlefield, because once you fall behind, your counter spells are horrible.
Yes, I agree. Which is why I'm cutting
Yeah.
4 of them.
I would cut as many as I could.
Yeah, I could try to get sabotages into the deck and just leave, or out of the deck and just leave and revitalize, but that also seems rather weak.
Yeah. On my side, I'm bringing in some counter spells and a Chemist's Insight to provide some card advantage, because generally you're expecting the control decks to bring in a lot of cheap interaction. That means you're not going to be as consistently getting ahead on the first 3 turns of the game, so you need some things that help you go long. Chemist's Insight doesn't seem great, but it prevents you from flooding, can do some card advantage, lets you hold up counter spells. Certainly better than sleep. These 2 were obvious cuts, and then I'm not entirely sold on Disdainful Stroke. It does counter Teferi, but you're pretty good at handling that. I think countering Cleansing Nova and Settle the Wreckage when you don't already have a Siren Storm Tamer is pretty important, and it does that. But it is forcing me to cut some threats. I wonder if I'm supposed to cut some number of Charter Courses just because it's like slow and sorcery speed.
No, because I think you having the ability to like play 1-drop in a Charter Course is a pretty big deal, and it doesn't really bottleneck you in this matchup to like trying to deploy more threats onto the battlefield. Like if you just play a turn 1 creature, like all you ever want to do is play Charter Course on 2 if you don't have Obsession.
Yeah. So, and I do think Charter Course, by giving you more velocity, does increase your effective density of creatures. So I have 16 actual creatures in my deck, but with Chemist's Insight and 4 Ops and Curious Obsession and Charter Course, you feel like you have more than 16 because you just see so many cards. So Warkite Marauder is definitely the worst threat here. Its ability isn't super relevant unless Todd has a Niv Mizzet, and if Todd has a Niv Mizzet, this card's not living. No. So
I'm going to take that damage. And then I'm going to untap and kill all your creatures.
Yeah.
All right. While we're also shuffling up, I'm going to keep my hand. I'm going to be on the play for game 2. But let's go ahead and get some more questions in.
Ross Marcus, the sad boy, wants to know, why is Greg Ostertag the best player in Jazz history?
Have you listened to the sound of his name? It's Ostertag. That's why.
Thillian is calling Dawn of Hope to be the breakout card from the Pro Tour. Thoughts?
That card is not good.
Seems like a card that is incredibly slow against aggressive decks. But if you were to build a Dawn of Hope deck that like had a bunch of life gain to stall against aggressive decks, like all the other elements were good, then you might have something. The issue is Dawn of Hope just dies against Golgari decks. So I can't imagine a deck like that is good against Golgari, but it might be good against everything else.
I mean, the card Dawn of Hope is like just inherently mana intensive, and if like I don't know, I could see like maybe a Naya Dawn of Hope deck that just had a ton of sweeper effects, life gain things, and use those life gain effects. Is the 1 mana artifact? Is it Fountain of Renewal? Or I forget what it's called. It's like 1 mana every turn you gain a life, and you spend 3 sack it and draw a card.
It sounds right to me.
I don't remember the exact name.
Font of Renewal.
Maybe. Anyway, so this card is a 1-2 punch with Dawn, and it lets you just draw a card, extra card every turn for 2 mana, while also gaining life, progressing. But for me, the strength of Dawn of Hope comes from being able to make the 1/1s. Fountain of Renewal. Like being able to make the 1/1s, and if your deck can't go long enough to make the 1/1s, or your opponent doesn't give you the time to make the 1/1s, like you're just in a lot of trouble, I think. So.
Yeah, and this might not be a metagame where you get
and also
that time.
the second Fountain is awful, or the second Dawn of Hope is awful. Like it just doesn't do anything.
No, you get to draw 2 cards when you gain life.
Great. Okay.
You don't make 2 tokens for your 4 mana though.
My hand is pretty keepable. What is yours?
My hand is pretty good. We've got some threats, some interaction. Just looking for a Curious Obsession.
Okay. I don't really want to shock very much, so I'm just going to play this tapped.
Okay. I am going to play a Mist Cloaked Herald.
Okay. All right. I'm going to opt and see what's up. All right. I do want this one. I don't want to shock, so I'm going to play this and say go.
I will play an island and attack for 1.
19.
Pass the turn.
Ooh,
Chime in here real quick. A
Yeah,
lot
what's
of
up?
people have been asking a question of anticipate over Charter Course in the mono blue deck, and I think I answered that by saying when you get to attack, you get to draw 2 cards with Charter Course. So that's,
Yeah.
Are you serious? that's my. Are you kidding?
There's some value in anticipate being an instant when you want to be holding up a lot of other things, but the power of Charter Course is going to override that.
Your turn.
On your end step, I'll play a Merfolk Trickster.
Okay.
Let's play an island and mush for 3.
Yep. All right, I'm at
16.
16.
Pass.
So this is a problem for me because I don't want to like burn my removal in this spot if he's not playing Curious Obsession on something. But my life total is also just like slowly dwindling. Like here, I think I should just try to steal away, right? But he could just be sandbagging his Obsession until he hits his 4th land, can play Obsession and double protect. All right. Well, we got the Spell Pierce out. That's not bad. Go.
And play an island and wish for 3 again.
13.
13. Pass the turn. This is a classic tempo here. Just get some threats down and start trying to counter everything Todd does.
Go.
On your end step, I'll cast a Chemistry's Insight.
I don't want him to resolve this because he just finds more things to do on his turn. And it's pretty expensive, and I want to dig a little deeper here. We're going to bottom.
Go to my turn?
Land. Yep.
It's graveyard.
You're right. I don't know
Yep.
why I did that.
Everybody
pulled a
does
Brad
it still.
Nelson.
Yeah.
So used to scrying.
Attack for 3.
Yep, I'm at 10.
Pass the turn.
And now I'm going to untap and play the only card in my deck with any relevant text, which is You're Dead. Go.
I don't recall any cards on the deck list being called Your Dad Go.
No, that's the ability on Nimbus that says you lose. Good day, sir.
Got it.
Can't be countered. How many? You got 4 counter spells in hand, I'm guessing. Also, you don't have Exclusion Mage or whatever, and you're dead. Nim is at a obviously very powerful card against a deck that's all islands and 4 counter spells in hand. In response, you can Chemisters if you want.
I'm definitely going to Chemisters in response.
Would you like to cast Die Down in response? Because you're
Come on,
dead.
man. I get it.
That's
You're
an English copy I gave you, right?
yeah. Look, I get that you're having an existential crisis here
In
against
response.
Nimuzet, playing a deck with literally no way to kill it, and probably 0 ways to get it off the battlefield. Your turn.
This is going to be a tough one.
Oh, I know. I block. You play Tempestin and me not have anything. All right,
Attack for 1.
I'm at 9.
This is where I could use these Psionic Blasts.
Wouldn't even kill it.
It would kill you.
Nah, I'm at 9. Nice.
Pass the turn.
All right, we're gonna untap and draw a Nimuzet. Ooh, a removal spell. All right, I will deal 1 damage here. Okay, I'm going to play an opt, trigger Nimuzet.
Yeah.
All right, I'll draw a card, trigger Nimuzet. 1 damage here, resolve opt.
Yep.
All right, we'll keep the sabotage. Triggers deal 1 here. Land for turn. Attack for 5.
15. I think I need to draw a Tempest Djinn right now.
Now you need to draw it last turn. Honestly, I would have been able to kill it though, I think. Yeah, whatever. I don't care. I'll just kill your creature if you counter it, so that's fine. Yeah. It's a living. Squack. Alright. Trigger this. Shoot this. Spell Pierce resolves. Your turn. And that is a nice one against this deck. Nice one.
Opt.
Trigger. 1 you.
14.
Oh, now I want to read this. Is this that good? Is this really that good?
Okay. Oh, well, just bottom out.
Yeah.
I can't just opt again.
Oh, you can. Absolutely. That is an option.
I think there's a card that was printed like 1 mana.
Pass the turn.
Each player draws a card at some point. Something like that. Kind of feels like what
On
you're
your
doing.
upkeep. Cast a Merfolk Trickster.
Sure, man.
Tap your thing.
Yeah.
Pass.
It has no abilities.
Yeah. Got him.
Go. Now it has abilities again.
Yeah. Attack for 2.
All right, I'm at 7. You know, at first I was like, wait, I don't want to get in the psionic blast range.
Pass the turn. Actually, I'll cast this thing.
Okay.
Pass the turn.
All right, your turn. Hopefully, nah, untap. Draw, shoot this. Attack.
9.
The main phase is seal away.
Your seal away resolves.
Target this.
Dive down the Merfolk Trickster.
All right, I will counter that. Draw. Oh yeah, I'm gonna draw 2 cards. Sorry. First for the dive down. Shoot this, and then counter it. Draw a card. Shoot this. This counters your dive down. I will surveil.
That
This-
enters.
Yeah.
This
Sorry, enters and stays in play, but that's gone from the Nimazat's abilities.
Yep.
All right. And I think I already played land, so I'll just take it. Resolves. Says instant sorcery, not non-creature.
Yeah.
So now Nezahal says non-creature. All right, I go.
Okay, go to my end step trigger.
Now I'm gonna kill it. And draw a card, shoot for 1, and gain 4 life. All right, so I'm at 11. You're at 8.
Let's go with game 3.
Now he packs it in.
Yeah, well,
Am I supposed to have like exclusion mages in my deck?
I don't know. Some versions play exclusion mage.
Well, I have 4 on the sideboard.
Oh, well, I think you just have to hope I don't draw it.
Like having a otherwise Skate zombies in my deck does not seem very good.
I mean, is there anything like bad in your deck?
Not really.
Yeah, I mean it's all counter. I mean, you can maybe cut Merfolk Trickster. It's kind of
Trickster is also just good against
sweepers. Well, it's also good against sweepers, and it's not good against Nimazet because you literally shut it off for literally
usually,
basically half a turn because I get to play stuff on your.
Well,
your turn.
that's all this does too.
Oh, but it makes me tap out again.
Yeah, it's better like against Niv-Mizzet, but it's not nearly as good otherwise.
I mean, I think bouncing is a pretty big deal because I can just cast a bunch of stuff on your turn and then not care about the Merfolk Trickster. Whereas if you make me tap out again, there's a good chance I just can't play anything the turn I'm casting it again or the turn where I cast it. Look, I'm not saying it's necessarily better than Trickster because Trickster having Flash means that you can like EOT it around a Clarion or whatever. So I'm just saying.
It's definitely better against Niv-Mizzet, but it's so much worse otherwise.
My hand is really bad, but it's almost great. Oh, it's also 8 cards. My bad. My bad. What the hell is going on there? I don't know. All right, here's the question.
Everyone's just kind of laughing at the beating that Niv-Mizzet just kind of put on.
Yeah,
so.
everything looked good. I had Todd at 10. I had 3 points on the battlefield. I had 4 pieces of interaction in my hand. It was like negate, Wizard's Retort, dive down, Spell Pierce #2.
Nice.
I could cast them all.
People are calling out Deep Freeze as tech for the Niv-Mizzet.
Yeah, enchantment that does it show off the abilities of the card too?
Is it the thing that makes it an 0/4 with?
Oh, that's not what
I'm
I'm
not exactly sure which card they're talking.
Let's look up Deep Freeze. I want to get that on.
Robert didn't have that one queued up either.
It's the
Wow.
enchantment.
I'm just bad at my
Classic
job.
Robert.
It's the enchantment that makes it an 0/4,
Deep
right?
Freeze, 2 and a blue, enchantment or enchant creature. Enchant creature has base power and toughness 0/4. Has defender loses all other abilities and is a blue wall in addition to its other colors and types.
Turns into a wall of ice.
Okay, I will keep my hand. We've got an aggressive hand here, but we'll see how it plays.
Yeah, mine's great.
I will play a Mistcloaked Herald.
Your turn.
Let's mush for 1.
19.
Pass the turn.
Go.
And a turn. Merfolk Trickster.
Yep.
So what's next, Ross? Should I have Disrupting Show ready to go?
That would be a nice one. Attack
Yeah.
for 3.
I'm gonna try to seal away this.
Sure.
Okay,
Take
take 1. I'm at 18.
I want to use this time to get down this Tempest Gin.
Yup.
Pass the turn.
Go. That's not good. Not good for me. You see the little minute pause that Ross had when I cast the Seal Away? That means he probably had 2 ways to counter it and chose instead to cast the Tempest Gin. I'm dead.
Curious Possession, my Gin.
Yeah, sure.
Attack you for 5.
I'm going to try to Seal Away it. There's
I am going to let the Seal Away resolve.
target it.
Dive it down.
Yeah.
You take 5, brings you to 13. I draw a card.
Nice. Okay.
And
You haven't played a land yet. You play land and/or 1-drop.
play a Storm Tamer.
Yeah, I'm dead. Go. This is the draws that feature Curious Obsession are the ones that beat me. 100%.
Declare attacks.
Yeah.
Attack for 7.
Yeah, take so.
Brings you to 6.
Yep.
I draw a card. I'll cast a Chart of Course.
Counter it.
That's fine.
Yeah, he's only going to counter things that kill his
that kill my
creatures,
stuff.
And this protecting this means that I need exactly a Cleansing Nova, and I need him to not have anything.
Got Wizard's Retort plus expansion?
No.
Or not expansion for the retort? Well,
I gave him the dead fish hand.
Todd thought this was going to be a runaway, but he got a game.
I did get a game. On the play, I cast a Nimazet. You never cast a Curious Obsession. Those are the games that I can win. I do want to break down this matchup specifically, and I want to break down exactly why I think Jeskai is not very good right now, because I have been a proponent of this deck for quite some time, and even as early as last Thursday when my article went up, but before the weekend, I actually thought that Jeskai Control was well positioned. Things change quickly in the standard format. If you look at the results from the Magic Online Championship, you'll see just 80% of the decks that were posted with 6-2 or better record are not good matchups for Jeskai Control. Even if you're playing 4 Deafening Clarion, even if you're playing a bunch of Shocks or Shivan Fires, or, it's not good enough because you're going to get continually presented with threats that are designed to be good against sweepers, because that's just how they design creatures now. They design spells that are good against spell removal by going wide, like History of Benalia, and they design creatures like Hunted Witness and Dauntless Bodyguard that are good against Deafening Clarion. They give the red decks things like Experimental Frenzy to be able to weather the storm. They give them Flame of Keld. They give them Risk Factor. And these spells are so well positioned against a control deck that's sitting on its heels, trying to hold up counter spells, that you're just going to get buried if you don't draw Clarion. And a lot of times you're going to lose even if you do.
Yeah, they tend to... sort of the rubric for building aggressive decks in the last 5 years or so has been to include a high density of these cards that Todd mentioned that are good against control. They're resilient to removal, or they provide a lot of card advantage. And then pair those with the threats that can be answered if they have it, but if they don't have the answer quickly, they get buried. They just die.
Yeah.
Like, things like, Chandra generated card advantage, but things like Hazoret, like that, it required a very specific answer, and that was very important. But it also said, look, you're going to die very quickly if you don't answer this quickly, or you don't have the right answer.
I will say that cards like Hazoret the Fervent were so unique in that they required a specific type of removal spell. But it's important to note that that specific type of removal spell is garbage against Bomat Courier. Just... to exile Hazoret, you had to at least spend, I think 3 mana was the super cheapest, and that was like an edict effect. But for the most part, you had to have your Ixalan's Binding, your Cast Out, your Settle the Wreckage, or most importantly, your Vraska's Contempt. And all these cards costing 4 mana against the deck playing Scrap Heap Scrounger and Bomat Courier was just a disaster most of the time. And that's one of the reasons why the deck became so popular and so prevalent, because it had all these threats. They required specifically different answers, but it also had an insanely good curve all the way up. Your 1-drop Courier, or 2-drop Heart of Kirin or Scrounger, your 3-drop Chain Whirler, and your 4-drop Hazoret or Chandra. And all these cards required wildly different answers.
Yeah. And the white decks now that we saw have success last weekend, things like Benelish Marshal that require an answer immediately. And that card can be weak against Deafening Clarion, if you have it, because it dies, and then the pump ability goes away. and you need Deafening Clarion sort of against History of Benalia, but if they followed up with Heroic Reinforcements and you waited to try to get the full value out of your sweeper, you might just die.
That's happened a few times to me, where I'm just like, normal play pattern, like you take the one hit from the 2/2, let them generate the second 2/2, you know, maybe they play one more creature. Nah, you're taking 26 this turn.
Yeah. But then they have things like Hunted Witness that stay around, or Dauntless Bodyguard that protects one of their things from a sweeper, or they play Snubboard Sentry and a Venerated locks it on, and suddenly they have all this power that doesn't die to your sweeper. So you're pulled in a lot of different directions, and if you want to play control, you have to be very on top of what people are playing, because you have to come with the right answers.
No, for sure. I think we're going to see a good bit of control at the tournament as just as a default. Like, people will try to play control. I think that if the aggro decks kind of stay true to what we saw last weekend, we're gonna have a lot of the same result in like decks like the white red deck we're gonna see next video. Take care of the control decks. We're also going to see mono blue like prey on those decks. The problem is a lot of these aggressive decks are weak to each other. I think that mono red specifically is not good against the mono white deck or the white splash red. I think that mono blue is atrocious against both. And you know, the mono blue deck really needs a very specific metagame to do well, and that is a lot of Golgari, a lot of control, a lot of decks with expensive things that get hit by Spell Pierce.
Yeah, tempo decks are historically very poor against other aggressive decks because they are interested in interacting with opposing removal, whereas the other aggressive deck, and they're interested in getting ahead and playing from ahead. They're very poor at playing from behind, and against the other aggressive decks, they fall behind, especially if they're on the draw. They don't have as much removal interaction with the battlefield, so they don't play well from behind, and that makes them fall victim to things, to those other aggressive strategies. And it's going to be really weak to things like History of Benalia and Goblin Chain Whirler. You're sort of reliant on gumming up the board for a few turns and going in the air with Tempest Djinn, and that's basically your only hope. And then siding into some more interactive cards like Collusion Mage, Diamond Mare, things like that can help you stabilize the ground and buy you time to find your Tempest Djinns.
All right, let's take 2 questions from Twitch chat, and then we're going to take a short break while we set up for the next round.
All right, Phoenix Flame wants to know, what's the best way to knock around Planeswalkers once they're on the board, because they're having trouble with things like Ral and Teferi once they're in play. And I say you have to beat them before those things are going.
Yeah, it's about getting ahead in the early turns so that they don't have a good window to cast them. Like, if your opponent casts a Teferi on a clean battlefield, then it's going to bury you. That's just what Planeswalkers do.
Yeah. So the answers are so specific that, you know, you just, even if you have them in your deck, if you don't draw them at the right time, they're not going to save you.
If they draw one, if they untap with the Teferi, they probably have a counter spell ready for your Vraska's Contempt or Assassin's Trophy or whatever, Ixalan's Binding, whatever you might have for them. So you sort of have to have it immediately while they're tapped low. And even if they don't have the answer for your removal spell, then they've probably drawn 1, 2, maybe 3 extra cards off of their Planeswalker, and that's enough to give them a significant advantage anyway. So the best way to deal with the Planeswalkers has always been getting ahead early. It's no surprise or no coincidence that the rise in the power level of creatures, that power creep, happened at the same time that Planeswalkers were introduced. For those first few years, for those that were playing back in Lorwyn block and Shards of Alara block, those first couple of years, the Planeswalkers were really dominant.
Yep.
Even things like Garruk Wildspeaker, which wouldn't see a ton of play now, or wouldn't be super good. It would still be pretty good. The untap lands ability, as we've seen, the ability to untap lands with your Planeswalkers and make them cheaper is really good.
Yeah.
So, like, Garruk Wildspeaker was really good. Elspeth Knight Errant was format defining. So was a Johnny Vengeant. All these Planeswalkers were huge because the creatures that then still weren't quite good enough to keep up with them, and the creatures had to be made better to compete with them, because that's always the best way to combat them. So,
yeah, I mean, there are only a handful of spells in Magic history that either say interact with target permanent or like destroy target Planeswalker, and everything else. The easiest way to kill a Planeswalker is through attacking, and usually the way that modern Planeswalkers are designed, they have a pretty high loyalty, which honestly I really wish they would scale back on, just because I want a card like Lightning Strike to just go to a Planeswalker sometimes. You know, I would very much like a Planeswalker that came in with 2 loyalty and just ticked up to 3, like Nisaravain back in the day. Like I thought that was very well designed, because cards like Blightning were a very good check for that powerful Planeswalker. And like when Teferi comes in and ticks up to 5 and you get to untap 2 lands,
Yeah.
a lot of times you need either 2 giant threats or like 20 threats on the battlefield to be able to fight through a seal away or whatever. And if they get to untap with a Disdainful Stroke or a negate and you're not killing it with the plus on the stack, you're just going to lose to that when you untap and go for the Vraska's Contempt.
And you saw a deck like this mono blue tempo deck. Todd's Teferi's were not particularly threatening. Either I had a cheap counterspell for them, so Todd would commit 5 mana and I'd commit 2 or 1, which is a huge swing for my side, or that he would have to -3 on a creature, or otherwise it would die to try to gain time, and I would flash in a creature or have something else to attack it down, and it would just be an expensive removal spell essentially.
Yeah.
So you saw the value in just getting ahead on the battlefield and then being prepared for Planeswalkers, but it's about careful play and what you do on the first 4 turns, not what you do once it's in play. Because answering Planeswalkers reactively is not a great way to.
It's a
to
losing proposition. when
Yes,
you're
there we
trying
go.
to
That's the
fight back
phrase.
from behind. I know I've played a bunch of Arena, and Teferi feels a lot like Jace now, where it's like if they draw 3 cards with that card, the game's pretty much over.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes it's just 2 cards, It
Yeah.
just doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
And then the Limit Break wants to know, are there any standard cards that you think will show up in Modern and Legacy that haven't yet? Obviously, we had Assassin's Trophy pop up, but
I mean, we've had a lot of Arclight Phoenix brews.
Arclight Phoenix. I've seen Curious Obsession in some Spirits decks.
I mean, I think the fact that a lot of these decks have, or a lot of these cards from Guilds of Ravnica have kind of even sparked the idea of new archetypes is pretty cool. I've seen a lot of Runaway Seamkin decks, like just brews that are weird and explosive because they kind of are trying to abuse the mana generation ability. I've seen a lot of Faithless Looting decks just trying to use Arclight Phoenix like Avengevine, which is pretty cool.
And we've seen a lot of different builds. I think there's something there with those. There's the mono red list with or without Steamkin. There's the red blue lists that have Electromancer. We also saw last week in the Grand Prix a sort of hybrid Mardu Pyromancer Arclight Phoenix deck.
Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Only had 2 Arclights in it, but it was doing some cool stuff, and there might be something there too.
Yeah, and with cards with flashback, like either the Faithless Looting themselves or even just Lingering Souls, a lot of times you can discard something early, and then as you develop and generate more mana, you can just spend a turn to kind of spin your wheels with the lootings or flashback of Lingering Souls, or just play a discard spell, and a removal spell in the same turn with one of those, and just bring back an Arclight Phoenix or 2. And it's just a threat that can put pressure on opponents, close games as flying. Just a solid card.
You know what card we need in Modern? Lava Dart.
You know what card we need in Modern? Firebolt.
Need more Lava Dart.
we saw.
Why didn't I just have Lava Dart queued up?
Yeah, Rob.
That was the
Where's
next
the
one.
Lava Darts at?
Sorry,
Jeez.
I should have told you.
I watched Jim Davis Lava Dart earlier today in Legacy with Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard, and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
We saw week 1 in Dallas for Modern, the blue-red Phoenix deck using Thing in the Ice, and I think that was like the real innovation there, because that card gives you the payoff to do spells along with Phoenix.
Very
and
right.
flipping the Thing in the Ice is just nuts when you get to bring back Phoenixes and just kill them.
The Thing in the Ice is one of the single best cards in Modern against Dredge. It is unbelievably good against them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just frighteningly good.
All right. Well, with that, we are going to take a 10-minute break while we prepare for our second round, where we're going to be playing the Boros Heroic Reinforcements deck. This is a white-based aggressive deck, splashing red basically for Heroic Reinforcements and some sideboard stuff. What are we playing that against? Golgari midrange.
Midrange.
Yeah, kind of the boogeyman of the format over the last month and a half, but honestly, it's been on a downswing lately. I'm excited to see if this version is capable of keeping up with this Heroic Reinforcements deck, because honestly, if the Pro Tour ends up being as aggressive as I think it is, if the Golgari decks can be built in such a way to handle them, they might be well positioned to come back in a big way.
The real thing I'm looking out for is how important and how effective Wild Growth Walker is going to be. You've got 2 main, 2 in the sideboard, so you're going to go up to the full 4. Can you win games without it? And can I win games where you land when you go Wild Growth Walker into Jade Light Ranger?
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we're going to see that and more in our next round of Versus Live. We'll be right back.